CEO and president of Charlotte Museum of History, Terry White, joining us to talk about some of the events and maybe tours that folks can partake in this Black History Month. Terry, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So I think the first thing that kind of comes to mind is the Siloam School, and that's just because we've done so much reporting on it recently and all of the efforts to kind of get it up and running and ready for the public to come take a look. So I guess how are tours going and what can people do this February?
Oh, tours have been wonderful. I'll say that even before people come into the museum, you see them walking up to the school building and saying, "What is this? What is this random building doing here?" And then they come inside and they ask questions. It is uh, rivals the Rock House, the oldest home in the county, as far as public interest. We give tours every day that we're open, so Tuesday through Saturday at 1 p.m. And on days where there aren't a lot of people who have signed up for tours, we still put someone out there. There hasn't been a day where at least a handful of people have come in to sit at the century-old school desks, relearn cursive. That's something that the children have really enjoyed, but also really seeing how far we as a state have come with public education and especially equity and the past of segregation within public education in the state. So it's really a way for people to immerse themselves and connect with our past.
Now, for folks who might not have heard of the Siloam School, what can you tell them kind of in a nutshell what the school is about and why it's so important historically for our area?
Absolutely. So Rosenwald schools were a series of about 5,000 schools, primarily in the American Southeast, that were funded by a fund from Julius Rosenwald, who was the CEO of Sears Roebuck Company, and Booker T. Washington, the famed Black educator. And what they were schoolhouses built in poor rural neighborhoods, primarily in African American areas, to provide education for students who were not permitted to attend existing schools, or they were so into the rural areas that there was no school nearby. Of this, all the states in the South, North Carolina had more of these schools than any other state. And of the counties in North Carolina, Mecklenburg had more than any other county. Today, there are only about 7 of these schools that remain. And the Siloam School was the only one from our research that was funded completely by the community. So they took the blueprints from Rosenwald and Washington, but said, "We got this, guys. We'll pay for this ourselves." And it is currently the only surviving school that is being used for educational purposes. Some of them, most of them have been lost to time. Those that are still standing are used for a variety of business and community needs, or they're just standing abandoned. And this one, we were able to relocate it. It was originally in the Mallard Creek area. It was at risk of being demolished. It was relocated to the museum, and we reopened it in summer 24 as a part of our interpretation of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County history.
If we could talk about, Charlotte and Mecklenburg County history, I think one thing that kind of I hear a lot from folks, either if they're visiting or if they've, moved here and they've been living here for a little while, is maybe they don't know where all the history is. For example, obviously you can go around town and see markers, like historical markers of like this used to be here, but it's not here anymore.
Absolutely. What I'll say is that Charlotte is a city that has reinvented itself multiple times over the centuries. And while that is amazing as far as being able to be agile and pivot industries or pivot societal focuses, we have unfortunately lost a good number of our historic structures for new shiny buildings as we become this metropolis of America's New South. Uh, the good news is that we now recognize, like, wait a minute, we shouldn't have torn all this stuff down. We shouldn't have thrown all these things away. And so institutions like mine, the Charlotte Museum of History, are really working to not just talk about historic preservation for the sake of keeping old things, but to talk about how it adds to the culture of a city, how it adds to economic development, affordable housing. It makes places more livable and have a more human touch for people. And those social issues and societal issues that people really think about when they want to talk about good places to live, raise their families, start a business, etc. And so, why it was important to save this structure is one, yes, there are not too many 100-year-old buildings around the city, just in general. But two, we wanted to show that you can stimulate the economy, you can help promote education and better housing conditions for everybody when you save what you already have versus starting from scratch every few years. So it was important for us for those sort of high level reasons. But also, again, none of these schools in our county are being used for educational purposes. So it's one thing to hear about one room schoolhouses or even see pictures of it or know someone who, when they were a kid, that was all that was available. But to be able to, you yourself, walk through a space and be transported back into time, I think it does something for people to really uh, bring to life the stories that you hear and read about. And for us, that's why it's important. We don't want the past to just be myths and fairy tales. We want it to be a tactile experience for people whenever possible.
If I could transition to some of the other offerings you all have this month. It
Yes.
looks like we have the African American Heritage Festival, which is back. This has become an annual event from what I understand, and you have a theme this year, Black Country.
Absolutely. And we did it before Beyonce. I mean, I'm so happy for her, but we had that theme picked before Cowboy Carter dropped.
Oh,
But
that's
this is just
impressive.
kismet that it all worked out this way. But normally we focus the festival. It's in its eighth year. It is by far our largest event of the year that we do. Uh, we have focused on education the last few years, primarily because of Siloam. But this Black Country theme, one of the things that came up while we were researching Siloam was just how quickly Charlotte has grown. And even as recently as 20, 30 years ago, the outskirts of Mecklenburg County were considered rural. And so, what does it mean when a city rapidly expands and becomes this mega city, the largest in the Carolinas, versus prior generations where there are still people very much so alive who remember taking horses to get around. So we wanted to highlight that piece of history to kind of acknowledge the fact that we know 2/3 of North Carolina is still considered rural places and acknowledge that there is history and heritage in those areas as well. So we're very excited about that.
What do you hope folks take away as far as messaging? Like when they go there and visit all the vendors and they learn, what do you hope people maybe come away with that they didn't understand before?
Well, one, I hope that they will understand just again how quickly Charlotte has grown. It's one thing to complain about the traffic. It's another thing to really understand just how quickly this has happened and what it means for us as a city. But it also gives people a chance to connect with the artisans, farmers, growers, makers who are still in rural parts of the state and of the region. We're going to have several farmers markets. There'll be several urban vegetable co-ops available that people can learn more about and learn how they can grow and kind of bring that farming agricultural life into their city life. We also are going to have John Boyd Jr. He is the president of the Black Farmers Association. They recently were acknowledged for getting a big settlement for decades of being disenfranchised by the government and being underfunded and under subsidized compared to all other farmers.
Wow.
And he's going to come and speak about the legacy of African Americans in America's agricultural past and the place we still have within it. So I hope it's a way for people to see another aspect of history that they may not think about while they're taking trains and buses and cars, but acknowledge that this is still a big part of North Carolina and American history. So I hope that they walked away with that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I see I'll also have the open wide the door exhibit. And so this is opera, which is so cool. Tell us about the exhibit and what folks can learn from that.
Well, the exhibit was actually supposed to close in December, and we extended it another 2 months by popular demand. We've won awards for it. It has received international press. It's an exhibit about Mary Cardwell Dawson, who is from the Piedmont region of North Carolina, and the National Negro Opera Company, founded in 1941, closed in 1961. And to date, it is still the most successful Black opera company in American history to
Wow.
this day. And she's been dead since 1961.
Wow.
We wanted to highlight this. Opera Carolina has been a great partner, but we also worked heavily with the Smithsonian, with the Library of Congress, and with some other larger museums from around the country. One, we wanted to show that we are a museum that can handle this level of exhibition, but two, it's just another unique lens of history. It's not so much trying to convert people into Verity fans, right? But we would love it. I'm sure our Carolina would love it if people came and subscribed. But it's to take a people who were told this is not for you. This art form, this music, this lifestyle, you're not meant for this. And so you need to stay over there and sing your gospel, sing your blues, sing your jazz, but this isn't for you. And Mary Cardwell Dawson and many of her contemporaries and the thousands of people that she employed really pushed against that and said, you don't get to dictate what I can participate in. And even if you hate opera, if you love opera, regardless, we hope that the message you get from this is these are people who fought against the odds against them to carve their place into a world that they were not welcome in. And I think that's an inspiring message for anybody that you can do what you want if you really want to do it.
That's great. And then your final one that we have on the list here is Path of Portraits. So this is local artists from what I understand.
It's a partner we have with Charlotte is Creative. We've been, this is year 4 of the partnership. We commission 3 to 4 paintings at market rates from local artists and commission work that depicts people who either lived before photography or they were undersung when they were alive doing these historic things. And so some of the people that are included, we have George Davis, who was a major education reformer here in Charlotte. We have Nance and Chow. Nance was one of the people we know was enslaved on the Alexander Plantation in 1774. John Lawson, who was an explorer who really mapped out this region of the country even before we were a country. We have a painting depicting Ella Mae Wiggins, who was a mill protester and who would rouse people up by using her guitar to get people excited through song. And just a wide variety of looking at the list of portraits, we have just over a dozen, maybe closer to 15 that we've painted. And again, we paint 3 or 4 of them each year. Of course, there are several African Americans included in this. And we use the paintings as a way to, again, help people connect to the stories of those who are no longer here with us, but who have a major influence and a story to tell on the way that Charlotte has shaped as a city. And we use this as a way that people who can no longer advocate for themselves, it's another way to give voice to those who have since moved on. So we're really excited about it. It will be up during the African American Heritage Festival, as will the Open Wide the Door exhibit. So February 22nd, come and see us. You can get 3 for 1.
I guess my final question would be, why is history so important to you? And why do you take such pride and such care in wanting to preserve history for generations to come here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County?
Absolutely. For me personally, history was a way to see beyond the world that I saw day to day as a kid. We take for granted that the movies we watch, the foods we eat, the places we go to hang out will just always be there. I had older parents when I was born, so to hear about even their lives as children versus what I experienced in the 80s and 90s was mind blowing to me. And it just became this obsession of seeing, well, how else have people dealt with the same things that I'm dealing with? Or, how did other people see things the way that I did? We assume that you can just go to the movies whenever you want, but what was it like when movies were new? When this was an industry that was just developing? We have these massive sports teams. Everyone goes down to Bank of America Stadium and they keep pounding for the Panthers. But one, what was there before Bank of America Stadium? And two, how did we decide that this should be an NFL franchise city? Those are the kind of stories that make history interesting and tangible and relatable. There's always going to be the people who want to memorize war dates and battlegrounds and, you know, God bless them. We need those people. But for the average person, I think that finding ways to connect even obscure topics to our day to day lives enriches our day to day experiences, but also humanizes those who came before us so that we can make better decisions for the future. History museums in this city in general, we tend to get second fiddle to our brother and sisters in the art world. And they are amazing. The Mint, the Beckler, the Gantt, they are outstanding institutions. The McCall Center. I would just strongly encourage Charlotte, if you ever find yourself saying, "There's no history here. Charlotte has no culture. Charlotte has doesn't have this. Charlotte has doesn't have that." Take a moment, get out of Uptown. I promise we're not in Narnia. We're very close. And experience the history institutions and some of the smaller cultural organizations that may not be top of mind. We are all out here working really hard to provide really cool and unique experiences for the citizens and residents of Charlotte, Mecklenburg, North Carolina, the world. And it really does make it worthwhile when someone can come in and say, "Wow, I never heard of you guys, but I really loved this program." Or, "Oh, I heard of this event. I had to come and just see what it was about." And so, again, if you're new here, if you ever find yourself saying Charlotte has no history, stop. There are 3 history museums here. We are all excited to share our hard work with you. And I hope your first stop is Charlotte Museum of History.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Absolutely.